So I was very excited when I got a phone call to be here because, there's nothing that I care about more than farmers. I grew up in a small town in rural America. My father was a stockbroker, and most of his clients were farmers. So I spent a lot of my childhood getting inside the car and in the front seat. We drive around, and he'd knock on farmers' doors. So I know from the very beginning, from a very early age, how important farmers are, to the future of this country. And I'm going to say Fred and Mike asked me to come down here and speak about the Obama administration and some problems or failures or concerns that we've had. I would just say I'm going to start out, this is the Obama that I used to know. So my name is Dave Murphy. I'm the founder and executive director of Food Democracy Now! We're a grassroots organization of almost 700,000 farmers and citizens dedicated to reforming food, agriculture, and environmental policy. We work a lot with groups like Food and Water Watch. We're much like Food and Water Watch, where we believe very strongly in who grassroots are and bringing people power to the table. I want to give a shout out to Chris Peterson. Chris Peterson, a good friend of mine, fellow Iowan, lives 6 miles from me. If anything I've ever done in the past offends you, you can blame Chris. and if there's anything I've ever done good, you can give Chris credit. I was very fortunate enough, 7 years ago, I moved back to Iowa to help stop a factory farm half a mile from my sister's farm. She had 4 kids. Her 2 youngest boys had severe asthma. She was a stay-at-home mom for 13 years. She was panicked. She didn't know what to do. My family are Republicans through and through in Iowa. They helped elected Branstad in his first 4 terms. Unfortunately, they have to see him now. But we thought we could get it. We could help stop that. We were having a conversation with the Republican Party. That didn't happen. So I've been a loyal Democrat for 7 years. And I was very fortunate, my family always was very fortunate, that we met a farmer named Chris Peterson. Because he had the courage and the strength to stand up to industrial agriculture in Iowa. And that's the same story with everyone in here. We know what we're up against. This is really tough stuff. We're up against the most powerful companies on the planet, but we're not going to give up. So, my partner said, well, you're going to have to drive 5 hours tonight, 5 hours tomorrow. I said, you know what? That's what I want to do. That's what I want. This is where I need to be. I need to be with this audience because you're the ones that are going to make change happen. I was saying, so real quick, Food Democracy Now! Some people have heard of us. We're not related to Democracy Now! And Amy Goodman. I love Amy. Wish we were, but we're not. We came up with that name in the summer of 2007 after I had spent a session, 6 months in the Iowa State Capitol working as a lobbyist. I have to say I've always been very involved in politics, loved history, and have gone to fundraisers and political events, Republican conventions in Iowa since I was 10 years old. So I thought I knew how politics worked. Working in the Iowa State Capitol, working on the issue of local control for factory farms, was an entirely eye-opening experience. What I learned is that when we elected Democrats in the House, Senate, and the governorship, for the first time in 30 years in Iowa, we thought we were going to get local control. We thought we were going to get local control because of people like Chris Peterson. A lot of farmers in Iowa and average rural citizens had fought for this issue for 15 years. It was a battle. It had reached fever pitch by the time of 2006 when Chet Culver went into the governor's mansion. Tragically, I spent 6 months at the state capitol spinning our wheels and being told by Democrats, oh, this is not going to work, it's not good for the economy. After 15 years of promises, low control. So I just say I lost my political chair in the Iowa State Capitol. That's kind of how that happened. Now my eyes woken up. I would say President Obama came into Iowa in 2007. I was fortunate enough to get hired by Chris Peterson, Iowa Farmers Union, to put on this thing called the Food and Family Farm Presidential Summit. It was a really unique opportunity to try to get sustainable ag and food issues in front of presidential candidates, people that were coming through Iowa and needed our vote. Now, at that time, Chris and the Vice President, Kevin Miskell, were very interested in a lot of the candidates, but I think that John Edwards had won their heart because he was there in 2004, and he had a very, very promising rural agenda. Very promising, and very progressive. And the interesting thing was Obama was kind of new in the issue. He was kind of a rock star senator. Before moving back to Iowa, I'd been in Washington, D.C., and what I had done was I'd worked at the Department of Labor as a consultant, and then I had worked 40 hours a week on Jim Webb's Senate campaign primary race. It was an underdog campaign. We worked really hard and won that election. But I moved back to Iowa. My sister and my dad asked me to. I graduated from grad school with $80,000 in student loan debt. I said, I don't really want to make a living going back to Iowa, fighting for factory farms. So I said, I'll be back for 2 months, and I helped run a local state Senate race. We lost that race, but we thought we were going to get local control in 2006. And I'll say we did not get it. But the good news is the presidential candidates came through Iowa the next year. So Chris Peterson, very great lobbyist, great farmer to go in and talk to these guys, always very persuasive. And that's why John Edwards' farm policy was so progressive. They listened to Iowa Farmers Union. The same thing is true with Obama. So I worked very closely with the Obama campaign, and we put on this thing called the Food and Farm Presidential Summit. It was very funny. I just want to say I was told to get into the political situation of what we were promised, and I want to read that. I want to talk about that real quick. So does anyone remember this? This is called Change.gov. This is Obama's real agenda. Anyone have hopes for this one? You remember this one? I remember having a lot of hope when this thing was put together. And Chris and I were at the table, as were a lot of other farmers in Iowa. So what they said, this is the first thing at the top. Ensure economic opportunity for family farmers. Strong safety net for family farmers. Payment limitations. Prevent anti-competitive behavior against family farmers. I wonder what that means. What does that mean? When they need to dust this one off. Pass a packer ban. When meat packers own livestock, they can manipulate prices and discriminate against independent farmers. Strengthen anti-monopoly laws and strengthen producer protections to ensure independent farmers have fair access to markets. Control their production, decisions, and transparency in prices. The third one is one of my favorites because I made sure this was in the top 4. It's regulate CAFOs. Strictly regulate pollution from large factory farms with fines for those that violate tough standards. Support meaningful local control. This all looks good on paper. It all sounds great. The other one, the fourth one, is establish country of origin labeling. They did try to implement that. We're getting fought, at the WTO, we're getting fought in other places. So, the thing is, what happened? What really happened? Obama, I just say I'm a small town, rural community organizer. Barack Obama is a community organizer from Chicago, Illinois. And I have to say, he claims to have Midwestern roots. And I would say, in rural America, your bond, your word is your bond. You tell someone you're going to do something, and you do it. I think for me, one of the greatest disappointments is watching this administration not pass GIPSA, the GIPSA rules. This is a bread and butter issue. You're the people that put it on the map nationally. It's heartbreaking. And I know that I had a conversation with Tom Vilsack in Clear Lake, Iowa. He was there for a fundraiser. Surprisingly, he did not give me a call. He came to Fukumachi-Now's world headquarters in Clear Lake, Iowa for a fundraiser for the Democratic Party. And, this was an issue that was boiling up right then. And I walked up to him, and he never likes to see me. I'm not sure why. Like I'm part of the Truth Squad in rural America. I'm here to tell the truth. We're not gonna dust this one off and tell lies and try to sugarcoat it. But we've been betrayed. This is really hard to accept. And I asked him. I said the rules were just about to be announced. I said, so when are the rules going to be announced? He said, well, they should be announced soon. And I said, well, how do you think it's going to be? Because both sides aren't going to be happy, and that's a sign of a good compromise. I said, really, that's not the sign of a good compromise, because I said, we're the ones that put you in office. I said, the Republicans and the meat packers, these guys are never going to vote for you, not once. They will never vote for you. They'll never donate to your party. I said, we're the ones that will get on the ground and fight for you in election. I think, unfortunately, Tom didn't think, Secretary Vilsack did not think that they had the political will or the political muscle in Congress to fight the GIPSA rules. I would just say, they had a mandate when they were elected in 2008, an absolute mandate. And they won rural America. I have to say, it was really remarkable to be in Iowa during the caucuses in 2007. The first African-American president was elected. It's really remarkable. I heard one comment about race the entire time for over a year's period. We were honored to be able to support him because we thought he was going to stand with rural America. We thought he was going to stand with family farmers. That was his That was his agenda. I would say I'm waiting for the first American president to stand up for the American family farmer and for rural America. That is the kind of leadership we need in Washington, D.C. And unfortunately, we haven't gotten it. I think everyone in this room is very full aware of the kind of problems that we're up against, the lobbying power. But, I'm confident. I am an organizer. That is my background. That is what I wake up to do. That's what I think about at all times. I would just say, so Mike and Chris have asked me, so what do you think the problem is? I think there's two things. I think there's power on the right and the corporate power. The Republicans wake up every day and they demonize their opponents. So it's like Bill Clinton or Hillary or Obama. They're the enemy. And they wake up every day to fight them. Democrats do not wake up every day to do that. They wake up every day to have a conversation. They wake up every day to think, well, maybe we can get a bill passed, and maybe if I get this compromise passed. The fact is, we need to keep standing up. We need to keep telling the truth. One of the remarkable things is we can make change. Food Democracy right now, we're about 700,000 members. This is run off a laptop in Iowa. My partner and I, Lisa Stokey, we're, her grandparents were farmers. Her parents were dairy farmers. They were in fertile Iowa. My grandfather was a cattle farmer in Defiance, Iowa. So we are working on raising a fertile defiance against this administration and this government. If they refuse to stand up for the American farmer, we're going to do it. The thing is, how are we going to do this? I knew when I met Chris Peterson and farmers like him in Iowa, that we had to tell this story to America. That this is a vital and an urgent story. That if you had openness and transparency in our food system, things like factory farm and the theft of our democracy could not happen. The American people would revolt. They would stop buying that food. They would not want to participate. That is what we have tried to do at all times, is to tell the conversation of family farmers here in rural America, in the small towns. Why does the burger on your plate matter? Why does the story behind how that's produced and the farmers that made it, why should it be owned by a family farmer like Mike Caltrate versus Tyson or Smithfield? Why does that matter? Most people today don't even know where their food comes from. I think it's pretty remarkable. But the pink slime story, that's kind of an interesting story that broke. And I have friends of mine that run meat packing plants in Iowa. They've done this for years. And they said, oh, that guy's a genius. That's a great idea. And I said, so you're taking meat that used to be dog food, you're rinsing it with ammonia and all this other bad stuff, and then you're selling this and putting in 20% of it in a burger, and you're selling it to American school children. That's a great idea. I think it's fraud, personally. I think it's probably a safety issue. But more than anything else, it's disgusting. And what was even more disgusting than learning about it? Was watching the governor of Iowa, the governor of Texas, and these other yahoos fly up to Iowa and have a press conference. Secretary Vilsack showed up. His wife was running for Congress in our district, in Chris and my district, against Steve King. For God's sakes, that's a clown show with Steve King. But, the thing is, they defended it. And I said, we were outraged. And, we had Lisa and I had just flown back from somewhere else, and we found out they were going to have a press conference at Iowa State. And we said, this is outrageous. We cannot let this stand. We cannot be silent on this one. They're doing this in our backyard, and they're trying to shovel this down our throats. I called everyone that I could think of. Called Chris Peterson. Mike Caltrate flew in from Colorado to fight this one. And you know what? The great news is, I think because we stood up and there was so much pressure, we stood up in Iowa and said, no way. No way are you going to do this. The other thing, there was so much media heat on it that it just stank to high heaven. The question is, there are more pink slimes in our food system out there waiting to be revealed. And I personally believe the antitrust and the anti-monopoly one is another one. But it's very complex. What do you do when you have an administration, and we're working in a coalition for a year, 20, 25 groups, maybe more. We have these 5 antitrust hearings around the country. We went to them, and I'll just say, our people on the East and West Coast, I love them to death. They go, oh, isn't this great? They're saying this. Oh my God, this is so great. Someone from the administration said that. I said, for me, this is a show trial. We've seen this thing happen in the Midwest, in these state capitals all the time. Well, let's study this one to death. And I'll just say, we lost it, and the Obama administration was too afraid to go forward. They were too cowardly. I'm sure other people put it more delicately, but we were betrayed. Vilsack and Holder do not have the stomach to take on corporations. I think the interesting thing is they're more interested in reading our emails, they're more interested in looking at our phone data, and they're more interested in flying drones over the skies of America than they are holding accountable the Wall Street economic terrorists that have caused this crisis. They're absolutely in bed in collusion. And so, I was going to show that video. There was a video clip of Obama promising to label genetically engineered foods that happened at that event. It's an interesting video. It hasn't been seen by enough people that need to see it. But I want to read something, two segments from Obama's speech in Iowa. And actually, I was kind of neutral at this point. This was November 10th, 2007 when he gave this speech. It's the same day as the Jefferson-Jackson dinner in Iowa, which is a big Democratic rah-rah dinner. It's like a political theater, Rumble in the Jungle. They get in a square, and they get a big microphone. They stand up and they give the speech of their lives. And Iowa Democrats go crazy and figure out who they're going to vote for at night. So Obama gave a speech 9 o'clock that morning, and later o'clock at 7:30 that same night. He had to give this speech. He had to give another speech to woo the Democrats. I'll just say the speech he gave in the morning was terrible, worst speech I've ever seen him give. But it was excellent on policy. It was brilliant. I'll just say, so here's what he said. I love this. This is really, I thought when he was saying this, I thought it was really touching. I had a video camera in front of me when he was saying that, so I was pretty excited to have it on tape. He said, it's time that Washington learned some history. It's time that we remember that this country grew from the toil, the sweat, and the ingenuity of generations of American farmers. It's time that we recognize that rural communities feed this nation and fuel our growth. And it's time we recognize that no one is more ready to compete, no one is more ready to innovate, and no one is more ready to lead this country into the 21st century than rural America. Now, I think those are beautiful words, and I'm very happy that he said them. But they don't mean anything unless you follow through. I'll just say I, for one, am tired and am exhausted to listening to politicians lie to us for a living and get away with it. I guess that's my job as an organizer. One of the things Obama said right after he was elected, and this was, there's these rumors you hear, meetings that took place that we're not at, but friends of friends find out. One of the things is a chef, a private chef that cooked him a meal right after the election said, well, what are you going to do about food policy? And what about, I think he may have mentioned GMOs or something else. And he goes, well, show me the movement. Show me the movement and we'll do this. And I have to say, we've shown them the movement time and time and time again. Winona, in Washington, D.C., the antitrust hearings, we delivered over 250,000 comments. We met with Christine Varney. We met with someone from the USDA. We had a nice meeting. We shook hands. It was very pleasant. And then they caved on us. So here's the other part of the speech that I really like. And you guys are going to like this one too. Here's what I'll do as president. I'll immediately implement country of origin labeling. Good idea? Sounds good? Because Americans should know where their food comes from. And we'll let folks know whether their food has been genetically modified because Americans should know what they're buying. Even better. And I'll use the bully pulpit to encourage folks to buy local because it's better for the environment, it's better for farmers, and it's healthy for Americans. We'll stand up against conglomeration in the farm industry. I'm going to admit he botched when he said conglomeration. I don't even think he knew what the word meant. He did not quite say it right. Kind of hung up. That's why that's what I'm doing today by supporting the Packer ban. The Packer ban. Probably the last time those words ever came out of his mouth. But the thing is, I do have, I'll just say the chips are down. We are up against very steep odds. But I am confident that we can win. We have, every day, there are more and more Americans that are waking up to the outrage of corporations taking over our country and stealing our basic democratic rights. I'll just say, this spring the Monsanto Protection Act passed. We lost. It passed. We tried to stop it for over a year. Since June or May of 2012, over a dozen groups fought behind the scenes and mobilized their networks to stop it. The stinky bastards snuck it in, over Christmas, and they got it passed. And we tried to stand up and fight it. Well, the thing is, Food Democracy Now, we didn't issue a press release about it. We didn't say we're gonna stand down. We said this is an outrageous moment in our democratic history. We have a president who is a constitutional law scholar. I had already talked to the USDA 2 weeks before it passing, and the people at the top of the USDA said they were outraged. They'd already written the Senate a letter saying they shouldn't pass it. It was potentially unconstitutional. I talked to the White House. They made claims that their lawyer reviewed it and was very upset about it. So I know what I would do when I'm very upset about something, and my political opponents are trying to pull a fast one over me. You know what I do? What we asked Obama to do was either veto it or issue a signing statement. And we know that a veto is a pretty high hurdle. I had a very entertaining conversation with a White House staffer that I know. And I said, well, you can do a signing statement. He goes, listen, we had a meeting with the White House. It was canceled the day it was supposed to be signed. He says, we can't have any press over this because we're going to look bad. I said, no, you're going to look bad when this thing goes through. I said, you have no idea how outraged people are. I said, I have 250,000 people that have signed a petition begging this administration. That was in a week's time. I said, this is a week's time. This is the awareness that people have now. I said, he goes, well, you're right. He goes, my mom's not going to understand why Barack Obama's not a bad guy when he signs this. But he's going to have to sign it. I said, listen, I think you should meet with us before you make that decision. I think we should have that conversation. The great news is, when they steal our rights, this could be the only thing that wakes the American people out of their slumber. The American people care about cheap food, cheap this, cheap that, but they do care about when you're trying to steal their rights. And I'll have to say the NRA is pretty skillful in deluding great numbers of people that they're going to try to steal their guns. I'm going to say right off the bat, I'm a hunter. I own a gun, but I do believe that we should have limited clips. That's a pretty common, in background checks, it's a pretty common thing. And I think that the power of the lobby, it's not just big agriculture, it's all this corporate money and all this corporate power. One of the last things I want to bring up, we're fighting at the state and federal level. And we are fighting incredibly hard. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of man hours and human hours have been put into this battle. And the real problem is, so far we've gotten some minor victories. Obama has a quote-unquote organic garden on his front lawn. So Obama gets organic food and we get to eat GMOs. I love it. So, the thing is, we're going to hold them accountable. On the GMO labeling issue, that's not an issue that was anywhere in 2007 when he was running for office. It wasn't an issue that it really didn't take off until 2011. Last year, California, Prop 37, 6 million voters voted to label genetically engineered foods. We just passed bills in Connecticut and Maine. Bills could pass in New Jersey, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts next year. Washington State has a ballot initiative. But the other thing is, I'm sure you're aware of these trade agreements that are coming around. And I want to bring these trade agreements up for a second. The Trans-Pacific Partnership, Transatlantic Free Trade Agreement, and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. They have all these really boring sounding names. I have to say, how do you make the American people want to wake up and fight on trade? It doesn't sound that interesting, but we've got to do it. They will steal all the things we're working for. We're working for local democracy. We're working for local control at the county level, at the state level, and they're going to steal it. They have 600 corporate lobbyists working behind closed doors. They've already had 17 meetings behind closed doors on the TPP. And you know what it means is, country of origin labeling is going to be gone. Labeling of genetically engineered foods is going to be gone. China is buying Smithfield. The American farmer is now going to be a serf for the Chinese army. Does anyone think that China buying Smithfield is a good idea? Doesn't sound like it. I'm just saying, we live in really difficult times. We have, there's a lot of opportunities here. I really think there's a lot of great opportunities. But we have to stand together. We have to be organized to fight this. It's not going to be easy. They had the fights in Seattle in the 90s. The question is, how can we do it today? I think the internet is a great means of communication. It's really like the Gutenberg press for mobilizing people and educating them. But the thing is, how can you get the word out? How do you get people to care? You're the ones that we're fighting for. We need you to tell your story to the American people. We need people to know why antitrust and GIPSA are important. I spent 2 weeks trying to convince a New York Times reporter who writes about food why they should write about GIPSA right before it was being decided. Apparently it was so confusing for him that he couldn't get it, but he puts out fancy little cookbooks every once in a while, you know, and something like GIPSA they could not get in the New York Times. I find that appalling, you know, but I have to say, I am encouraged. I do think we can do this. I do think we can win, you know. We've done it in the past, you know, watching Chris Peterson fight in the state capitol in Iowa. For me, it was personally an inspiring thing. It's what motivates me every day, is to have farmers out there and know that we have to tell their story. We have to get the word out. This is really important stuff, and I'm glad to be here today, so thank you.